Friends, welcome back in another mode of action video lecture series. So today's video tutorial will about Griseofulvin B, another antifungal drug. So what is the mechanism for today's drug? So today's drug affects the nucleus, okay, and by affecting nucleus it inhibits the protein synthesis, okay, and it also inhibits the cell division. How I am going to discuss with you within some minutes. So we can conclude that Griseofulvin is a fungistatic drug. Griseofulvin is a fungistatic drug. Why? Because remember, it just inhibiting the cell division, okay, so it just stopping the growth of the cell. It does not destroy the cell that has been already grown, okay, so that is why we will say it is fungistatic. If it causes destroy or destruction of the cell just like amphotericin B, then we will refer them as fungicidial drug, okay, and here as Griseofulvin is involved in just inhibiting the growth, so we will call them fungistatic drug. So Griseofulvin is derived from Penicillium griseofulvin, you need to remember, and it is effective. Again, we are going to discuss about effectiveness. We do not break our pattern, right? So let's come to the mechanism. So Griseofulvin will bind to what? Griseofulvin will bind to microtubular protein, which is important for the cell division in nucleus. So Griseofulvin will bind with the microtubular protein important for cell division in nucleus, and it will disrupt the mitotic spindle, which play a important role in mitosis, and as a result the mitotic cell division become inhibited. It leads to the inhibition of mitosis in fungal cell. Well, I think you all know that what is mitotic spindle, right? I think you may have some problem to recognizing which one is mitosis and which one is meiosis. So the easy trick here is, let's remember, let's focus on the T, okay. Remember, in case of meiosis there is no T. So mitotic cell division simply the cell division where the cell ultimately divides into two, right? So you can remember this in such a way. So okay, so the Griseofulvin binds to the microtubular protein in the nucleus, and it disrupts the mitotic spindle, which leads to the inhibition of mitosis in fungal cell. Now after that they will deposited in the new skin and bind with keratin to prevent new infection, okay. So this is another important property of Griseofulvin. They also deposited in the newly forming skin and bind to keratin and prevent skin from getting newly infected. It is important. So they also play important role in precaution too, right? So for up to that part we have learned about that Griseofulvin is an antifungal drug. It affects the nucleus and inhibits protein synthesis. It is a fungistatic drug. We have described it in such a way because it does not causes the destruction of the fungus, but instead it inhibits the growth, okay. So it is derived from Penicillium griseofulvin, and it is effective against superficial dermatophytosis caused by trichophyton, microsporum and epidermophyton. That is important. Trichophyton, microsporum and epidermophyton caused superficial dermatophytosis can be treated with Griseofulvin. So the mechanism is quite interesting, that Griseofulvin binds with the microtubular protein in nucleus and disrupt the mitotic spindle, which leads to the inhibition of the mitosis in fungal cell, and then it will deposited in the new skin and bind to the keratin to protect skin from getting newly infected. So that is the important point. Now let's come to the pharmacokinetics part. So first of all, it is poorly water soluble and poor bioavailability. Remember one thing, if the bioavailability is poor, so we can increase the bioavailability by just increasing the absorption. So we can increase the absorption by using microfine particle and fatty acid. And it is also a microsomal enzyme inducer, because it affects other drugs that have been taken simultaneously with griseofulvin. That means what? That means we have to take griseofulvin with necessary precaution. We need to know what kind of. So another important thing, it is a microsomal enzyme inducer which affect other drugs simultaneously that have been taken simultaneously with griseofulvin. So we have to keep this in your mind while we are taking griseofulvin, because it can affect other drugs, okay, being a microsomal enzyme inducer. Not only that, griseofulvin can itself be affected with other drugs. We are going to see this. So in the pharmacokinetics, we have learned that poorly water soluble, they have poor bioavailability, but we can make up this by simply increasing the absorption by using microfined particle and fatty food. Question may come that how can you increase the bioavailability of griseofulvin? So you have to simply increase the absorption by using microfined particle and fatty acid. It is a microsomal enzyme inducer, and it affects other drugs that have been taken simultaneously with griseofulvin. Now let's come to the interaction part. Important. So this interaction part. So if you are taking phenobarbital along with griseofulvin, so phenobarbital have the ability to decrease the absorption of griseofulvin, which ultimately affect its action. Because remember, if griseofulvin is not well absorbed, so it cannot work at its best, right? So phenobarbital, if you are taking, then it will negatively affect the action of griseofulvin, okay. Again, if you are taking griseofulvin, then it have the ability to increase the metabolism of warfarin, which is also not good for us, that because if warfarin is continuously metabolized, then the concentration of warfarin will become decreased. So we have to add this. And most important thing is, the alcohol should be avoided when you are taking griseofulvin as a antifungal treatment, because it can act just like disulfiram. So disulfiram is what? Disulfiram is a very famous treatment in case of alcohol addiction, because disulfiram causes alcohol intolerance. So headache, vomiting occur if someone take alcohol along with disulfiram, and griseofulvin does the same. So that is the important interaction. So what we have learned today regarding griseofulvin. So griseofulvin is a drug that affects the nucleus. It inhibits the protein synthesis. It is a fungi-static drug. Why? Because it are not involved in destroying the fungus. Instead, it focuses on just inhibiting the growth. We have derived the griseofulvin drug from Penicillium griseofulvin, and it is effective against superficial dermatophytosis caused by trichophyton, microsporum, and epidermophyton. Important. Amphotericin B was effective against candidiasis. I hope you know this. And griseofulvin is effective against superficial dermatophytosis, trichophyton, microsporum, and epidermophyton involved in causing the superficial dermatophytosis. Then the mechanism is very important. So griseofulvin simply bind with the microtubular protein in nucleus. It also disrupts the mitotic spindle. So in that way, it inhibits the fungal mitosis of the fungal cell, and it gets deposited in the newly formed skin and binds with keratin. So in that way, it protects skin from getting newly infected. Pharmacokinetics: poorly water soluble, poor bioavailability. Absorption can be increased by using microfine particle and fatty foods. It is a microsomal enzyme inducer, so it can affect other drugs that have been simultaneously taken with griseofulvin. Phenobarbital that we are using can be decreased and decrease the absorption of griseofulvin, so which ultimately affect its action. So you can only remember that phenobarbital negatively affects the griseofulvin's action. Griseofulvin increased the metabolism of warfarin, which is also not good for us, and alcohol should be avoided when you are taking griseofulvin as your antifungal treatment, because griseofulvin also act as a disulfiram, that means it causes alcohol intolerance. So that's it for today, guys. So today we have learnt about both the amphotericin. If you have not watched the video from where I have discussed about the mode of action of amphotericin B, though I will recommend you to go to my YouTube channel and watch. And we have also discussed in that video about the mode of action of griseofulvin. I will come back with another mode of action in our mode of action video lecture series. So till then, bye bye.